So I'm simply exporting the error middleware, that's it. Okay, so now once you export this, you simply need to use it wherever you want. So I want to use it inside my user route. So here itself, I'm just going to say my user route has to be given the middleware. So I'm just saying my middleware should be added here. So I'll just say first, suppose my first middleware we created is error middleware, right? Error middleware, and I would just say require and import it from middleware's directory, and inside this we have error middleware file. Okay, so that's it. So middleware's directory, inside this we have error middleware file. Okay, why do we have to write dot dot slash? Because obviously we are in user routes, so we have to jump out of the routes folder. We have to jump out of the routes folder. If I jump out of the routes folder, that means where am I? I'm actually inside the root, that is task manager backend. Inside this I have to look for middlewares. Okay, that's what I have done. Dot dot slash. Now you are in roots. Inside roots you have to look for middlewares directory, right? Inside this file. Okay, that's how you import a middleware. Now if I want to use this, I would simply say that suppose if there is any error, so I can actually handle that error by simply calling the middleware. So how can I call the middleware? First of all, so I have to call the middleware somewhere in the end, because obviously you would be showing the error in the end, right? So you would simply say here itself, I'm just going to say router dot use, and inside this I'm just going to call my error middleware. Okay, so I'm just going to say that suppose here an error is caused. Okay, here an error is caused. So I would simply say next error. But here when you are talking about middleware, when you are using middleware inside this, right? I'm using a middleware inside this. That means whenever there is an error inside this, automatically next would be called and error would be sent to that place. What is next? So next is actually this middleware. Okay, so I'm just saying since you want to use next, so you have to write next here. Okay, write next here. Okay, that's it. That's how it actually works, and that's how your errors would be handled perfectly. Okay. Now guys, you can see that if there is an error, you would get the error here, rest everything is fine. So now let's try to write the register API. Okay, then we'll see how this middleware works exactly. So here I would just say that we are going to take a few details like name, email, password from the front end, right? This is what would be sent by the front end. Now after this, I have to check that if the user exists or not. So I would simply say const. Actually, MongoDB would directly give the error because your email must always be unique, but still I'm going to say existing user equals await. Okay, await, and inside my database I have to look for what? I have to look for a specific email. Okay, look for a specific email. So I'm just saying that if in my database this email already exists, that means you can't register again with the same email. Okay, so I'm just saying if user exists, then I'm just going to send a error. So I would just say that if user exists, so throw a new error. When I say throw a new error, it would be automatically sent to this, and automatically the middleware would be called, and middleware would actually get the error. Okay, but here the problem is you are not getting the status code. So how you can actually get the status code? By default you can see I am not providing the status code. So the problem here would be you're not providing the status code. So obviously how the status code would be identified? By default it's 500, but still I need to provide status code, right? So I would simply say instead of this I can just create a variable here, err equals, and I've just created an error. Okay, it's actually led because I'm just going to modify things, and or else you can do things directly. So I'm just going to say err dot status code is this, whatever you are taking here. Okay, so you are actually taking status code. So yes, you are taking the status code, that's it. Okay, now after this I'm just going to say whatever it is, I would just throw that error. So if there is any error, I would get that. Okay, I would get that. Else everything is fine. Okay, else everything is fine. You can see that if the user exists already, then I'm going to send an error. If the user doesn't exist, that means I'm allowed to create that user with that new email. Okay, so I'm just going to say const if there is no issue. So I'm just going to create a new user, and I'm just going to say that new user would be created with these details, name, email, password. Now after this I want to save this to my database. I would just say await new user dot save. So once I call this, what actually happens once I call this inside my user schema, you can see these are the details which I provided. Just before saving, convert the password into hash format, then just save it to database. Okay, so just before saving, this would be called, then things would be saved to my database, right? So that's how it actually works. So you called save here. Inside schema, first your password would be converted, then data would be saved your database, right? That's how it actually works, right? So after this, once your data is saved to your database, you actually have to handle this. So you can simply say that after this, I would just say res dot status, and whatever is the status, actually you need to just say res dot response. Okay, so now after this, guys, so now once you save this, you want to send a response, but actually what say that when you are sending a response in register, that means registered successfully, logged in successfully, there must be a common method which can be identified easily by the front end. Okay, that means okay, true or false, which I provided in the middleware, similar to this. Okay, so we would create a format here. You would just create a function here which is named as create response. Okay, so I'll just say we have suppose created a function here. So let's say that the function is const create response. Okay, and whatever it is, I would just provide to this. So I would just say here you would be providing three things. First, the value of okay, then the message, then we are going to say whatever is the data you want to send to the response. Okay, you would just return it as it is. Okay, so it would actually return an object of these three things so that the order is maintained. Now what I would simply say is, once the response is generated, I would simply say create response and send this details. Okay, so okay value would be true, message would be user created successfully, and then as a data I would be simply providing whatever new user which we created. That's it. Okay, so once the user is created, I would see something like this. If user wasn't created, I would get the error. If the user already exists, I would get this error. Okay, so now let's try to hit this register API by simply going to our Postman. And inside Postman, guys, let's create a fresh collection. So here itself I'm going to create a new folder actually, and let's name this folder as task manager. Okay, so if I hit this, and here I'm just going to say that we have suppose a directory for user. Okay, so for user APIs, I'm just going to create a directory user APIs. Okay, user APIs would be here. Similarly, I'm going to create another directory for task APIs. Okay, so that the directories are separate, so it's easy. Okay, so I'm just going to say it's a task APIs. Right, so just after this, you can see it looks fine, and I'm just going to clean everything from here. Now let's start from user APIs. Here we are going to add a request which would be again starting from localhost. So I would just go to my code, and I would go here, and I would simply type it here. So let me first of all check this so you can see that this is working. So first of all, since we are talking about user API, so we want to simply say it's users. Okay, it's users, so you can see user routes are working. So let me just name this route as test. Okay, test route for user. Now I'm going to create another request, and this time I'm just going to say that we have users inside this. We want to register. Okay, we want to register, so I would just say that this is what is the register API. Okay, register API, and again it's the post method. And headers, you would be simply saying content type is application JSON so that the data can be identified which is sent by front end. So now inside the body, I'm going to say that what would be my data. I would just say suppose the name would be provided, and the name is suppose HARSHAL Jen. Okay, and suppose some other details like email would be provided. So I'll just say that email is, I'll just provide my email, so viraj014 at the rate gmail.com. Okay, then I would provide one more thing, for example password. So password is important, so password. Okay, password, and I would just say my password is suppose HJ123. Fine, so you can see that that's how it actually works. You can add different things, like for example, I can actually add some validation also. For example, your password is suppose lesser than 6 digits, so you can simply say that if password is suppose lesser than 6 digits, so you would simply throw an error that is password is must be at least 6 character long, and then the status code, and then error would be sent to the middleware. Okay, so that's how you can create some validations wherever you like. So I hope now you understood. Now suppose the password is lesser than 6 digit. Okay, so now let's try to hit this first of all. So first of all, you can see that I got this error, password must be at least 6 characters long. Okay, so why it happened? Because you can see I'm actually, if I just show you my error middleware, you can see that I am sending this response. Okay, so actually, the problem here is you can see that I'm getting the error, but I'm not sure am I getting the error here also. So you can see password must be 6 characters long. Okay, fine. And I would also check that if error middleware is called or not. So I would just say console.log, and here I would just print the error middleware called. Okay, so that I know that error middleware is called. So now if I try to click on send, so it's taking time, but you can see yes, that's it. So you can see there is again some problem. The problem here is the password must be at least 6 digit, but you can see that my error middleware is not called. Why it's not called? Because I'm throwing an error, and in the next you can see that I must, let me just print here also. Let's see if we are able to go inside this catch block also. So we are just going to say inside catch. Okay, inside catch. Now let's see that if it works or not. Okay, so again, if I just say send this, so it's sent, and you can see inside catch. And then after this, I'm just going to show the error. Okay, so in our case in register, we are just calling what? We are calling our middleware error middleware. Okay, we are calling our error middleware, but the error middleware is called, but we are not able to get the message. Okay, why we are not able to get the message?